A few years ago, before we bought our home, a fire had tore through it. I stood there looking at an empty shell on a few acres of land. Under that shell was a metal frame. Now, you may be saying to yourself, Chris, why on earth would you buy a burned down manufactured home? Well, that's exactly what this video is going to be about. Because what if I told you there's a whole category of homes here in Chattanooga, Cleveland, all of Southeast Tennessee where you can own something real on real land for significantly less per month than a comparable site-built home. And most people scroll right past them. The stigma is strong. And if you're interested in saving some real money, this will be one to watch. I'm Chris Roberts, your Southeast Tennessee relocation realtor. And today we're going to look at what our own MLS data says about these manufactured homes and answer the question of, do these really appreciate in value? We'll talk about a weather concern that nearly everybody has with real hard data, not just reassurances. And I'm going to share my opinion about zoning laws in the state that I don't think get said enough. All right, let's just address the elephant in the room because the stigma is real. When a lot of us grew up, the term a mobile home was almost a punchline. It conjured up images of thin walls, peeling vinyl floor, the whole thing rattling when a truck drove by. People assumed if you lived in one, you couldn't afford anything else. And they assumed that if you bought one, you'd watch the value disappear faster than the moment your car drove off the lot. Here's what changed. In 1976, the federal government stepped in with the HUD code, a set of national building standards that transformed what manufactured housing actually is. Before 1976, totally the Wild West. After, these homes had to meet standards for structural integrity, fire safety, energy efficiency, and more. And with every decade since, those standards have gotten stronger, not weaker. Today's manufactured homes can be placed on piers, on full basements, crawl spaces. They can have real hardwood floors, open floor plans, vaulted ceilings, solid surface countertops. Some of these you cannot tell apart from a site-built home from the outside or the inside. The word trailer does not belong in this conversation anymore, and yet there's one legitimate concern about manufactured homes that I'd be wrong to skip over. So before we get into those numbers, let's talk about tornadoes. My friend, someone I actually talked to about this specific video, told me she would never live in a manufactured home because she's afraid of the structure just flying off in a tornado. And certainly that fear is not irrational. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Storm Prediction Center, in 2020, 39 of the 76 tornado deaths in the United States, that's more than half, happened in manufactured homes. And manufactured homes are only about 6% of the housing stock. And an Auburn University engineering professor who studied this called manufactured homes in non-coastal areas, quote, death traps compared to most permanent homes when it comes to tornadoes. Not sounding so fun, right? Well, here's the part that really got my attention. The federal anchoring standards that could help the most, the tougher coastal requirements, only apply in hurricane zones like Florida. Most of tornado country, including almost all of Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi, falls under the most lenient anchoring standards on the books. That means that this is a policy failure as much as a construction issue. And it means that if you're buying a manufactured home in Southeast Tennessee, asking about the anchoring system isn't optional, it's essential. So why am I still living in one and why am I making a video about them? Well, mine is definitely anchored, and according to engineering studies in virtually every manufactured home where a tornado fatality occurred, the anchoring system was absent, insufficient, or had degraded over time. The issue in most cases wasn't the walls or the roof, it's whether the home was properly secured to the ground. When anchoring fails, the home gets lifted off and rolled around, and when that happens, people die. Here's the thing about that, it's fixable. Proper tie downs and proper anchoring to a permanent foundation and proper installation can significantly change that equation. Now, it doesn't make a manufactured home a storm shelter. Nothing short of a concrete bunker is going to do that, but it's the difference between a home that rolls and one that stays put. The other piece of this is preparation, and this applies to any home without a basement. Know your plan before the storm season. Know where your nearest shelter is and how long it takes to get there. In many parts of rural Southeast Tennessee, we don't have basements. A lot of site-built homes around here are on slabs or block foundations. So the answer isn't to avoid manufactured homes, it's to have a plan. And if you're seriously considering a manufactured home, Ask about the foundation and anchoring system. Get it professionally inspected. I'm not going to tell you that tornado risk doesn't exist, but I will tell you it's a manageable risk, not an automatic deal breaker if you go in with your eyes open. Now, let's talk about something that I found really interesting, which is the money. Specifically, does a manufactured home hold value or not? Here's what a March 2026 report from Realtor.com found, and it stopped me in my tracks when I first read it. Between 2019 and 2026, just 7 years, manufactured homes sold with land appreciated 70.1%. Now let that sink in for a second. 70.1%. In that same period, single family site built homes appreciated 58.6%. The thing that people have told you is a terrible investment, the thing that people have warned you to stay away from for decades, outpaced traditional homes in appreciation over a 7-year window. I hate to say it, but I had to read that twice. And then I went and pulled out our own local data to see if it held up here. And it's not a cherry picked anecdote. That's national data from one of the most respected real estate research teams in the country. Now, and I never like to be the guy who puts an asterisk on good news, here it is. Those numbers are measured over a specific window. Manufactured home values, they surged hard during COVID and have cooled over the past 2 years, just like everything else. So I'm not saying this is a guaranteed rocket ship. What I'm saying is that the people who wrote these homes off as guaranteed money losers were just wrong. And the appreciation story is strongest when you own the land underneath the home. But here's what the Chattanooga MLS data says, and I want to be specific about where this comes from because I think that sourcing matters. I pulled this directly from our MLS. I filtered for manufactured homes only, closed sales since January 1st of 2025, and I excluded anything built before 1990 because I didn't want older homes skewing that picture. That left me with 278 closings, real buyers and real sellers in this market. Now, here's what that data showed. The median days on market was 27 and a half days, and the list to sold ratio was 97.5%, meaning that sellers are getting almost exactly what they're asking. Now, I did the same pull on comparable stick-built homes, similar range of square footage, the same 1990 or newer filter, same time period. Those came back with a median price of $310,000, days on market of 23 days, and a sold to list price ratio of 98.6%. Here's what that comparison tells you. $85,000 less. That's a college education. That's money towards retirement. That's a year of financial breathing room. You're getting a home that sells in nearly the same time frame and gets nearly the same percentage of its asking price. This is not a distressed asset class. This is a legitimate active market. Okay, I know what some of you are thinking right now. Chris, this all sounds great, but there's no way I can get a normal mortgage on a manufactured home. I hear that a lot, and I get it. It used to be a much bigger obstacle than it is today. Sorry, but this myth just needs to go. In our local market data, one of the most common financing types for manufactured homes was FHA loans. Now, these loans account for nearly 4 out of every 10 sales. That's not a personal loan with a sky-high rate. That's a federally backed mortgage. VA loans had 32 of those transactions, conventional 65, and cash buyers made up about 21% of that market. And here's what that actually means for you. If you're a veteran, a first-time buyer, someone who's been told that you can't get financing on a manufactured home, the data from right here in our market says otherwise. Here's what you need to know about financing because it matters a lot. When a manufactured home is on land that you own and sits on a permanent foundation and is secured to the ground, it qualifies for real mortgage financing. FHA, VA, USDA, conventional, the same products that you use to buy any other home. That's the scenario I'm talking about in this video. You own the dirt. The home is permanently affixed and financing reflects it because in the eyes of a lender, that combination is real property, not personal property. And real property gets real mortgage rates. That's a huge deal. And like a regular site-built home, you're going to have some ongoing costs. With a manufactured home, there are a couple of items that aren't always thought of. The first is releveling. This is one that I didn't know about until I owned one. If your home is on a pier and beam foundation, which many are, the ground moves over time. Soil shifts, moisture changes, frost heaves, they can happen. And when that occurs, your home can settle unevenly. You'll know it's happening when your doors start sticking, your windows might not seal quite right, or your floors feel like they're just a little off. Maybe you notice a couple of cracks in the drywall. When that happens, you need a contractor to come out with some hydraulic jacks, access the crawl space, and re-level the home with shims on the piers. Manufacturers recommend doing this proactively every 3 to 5 years, even if you're not noticing symptoms yet. The cost for a double wide, you're typically looking at $1,000 to $1,500, and a single section might be $600 or $700. It's not catastrophic, but it is a recurring expense that site-built homeowners on a slab simply don't have. So budget for it. And then there's the skirting. That skirting is the panel of material that runs around the base of the home, enclosing the crawl space, helps to keep pests and everything out, and frankly, kind of makes a home look a little finished. That stuff doesn't last forever. Depending on the material, be it vinyl, fiber cement, or whatever, you're looking to replace it every 10 to 15 years, and you could be looking at $1,000 to $4,000 for that whole job. All right, one more thing on pier foundations specifically. If you do notice your doors and windows are sticking a little, don't ignore it, but don't also immediately assume the worst. That's often just a leveling issue and it's fixable. The risk is when people put off that maintenance and small settling turns into big structural stress on the frame. So stay on top of it, and it's a manageable cost of ownership. None of this is to scare you off. It's just to make sure that you buy one with realistic expectations, not sticker shock in 3 years. Now, I want to put my opinion hat on here for a minute because I think this matters and I don't hear enough people talking about it. Right now, cities and counties all over Tennessee and across the country are changing their zoning codes to allow for higher density housing. Mostly going to be townhomes, duplexes, ADUs. There are real substantive policy conversations happening right now about how to make housing more affordable through zoning reform. And yet, I haven't heard a single conversation about changing zoning codes to allow manufactured housing. Think about that for a second. We have a nationally tracked housing category that has outpaced traditional homes in appreciation, that has monthly payments that can be hundreds less than their stick-built counterparts, that is built for federal safety standards that modern buyers cannot distinguish from site-built homes, and we're still governing it with zoning laws written decades ago when the product was genuinely different. Even restrictions in subdivisions often have blanket prohibitions on manufactured housing. And I understand why those rules were written, but I'd argue that the right conversation to be having right now is not whether to allow manufactured homes, but which manufactured homes to allow. Something like built 2010 or newer, homes meeting a specific HUD certification, all of that. Update the restrictions to reflect the reality of the product today, not the products of the 70s. We talk a lot about the affordable housing crisis in America. We talk about people being locked out of home ownership. And then we leave one of the most affordable, most appreciating, most accessible ownership options sitting on the sideline because nobody wants to be the person who says, we should allow manufactured homes in this neighborhood. I think that really needs to change, and it starts with conversations like this one. All right, now that that's out of my system, let's talk about who this is a great fit for and where it might not be the right answer. Whether you're looking in Chattanooga, Cleveland, or in the smaller towns of Southeast Tennessee, manufactured housing could be a strong move if you are a relocator coming from a high-cost market who wants to own something in Southeast Tennessee without a massive mortgage payment. Maybe you're a first-time homebuyer who's been priced out of the site-built market at $350,000 and on up. Or you're someone who wants land, acreage, a garden, some space, and wants to get onto that land without spending $500,000. Or you're a buyer who understands that equity is equity, and building equity in a home beats sending a rent check to a landlord every month. Now, it might not be the right fit for you if you're in a neighborhood with deed restrictions that prohibit it and you don't want to navigate that landscape. Or maybe you need financing that the home doesn't qualify for. Or you're not comfortable with the hands-on maintenance ownership requires. Here's the thing that Realtor.com report said that I keep coming back to, and I'm paraphrasing it here. If you feel locked out of the traditional housing market, but you want to start building generational wealth, a manufactured home on land that you own is a legitimate alternative to renting. Every month, your payment builds equity. Equity that can be passed down to your kids, to your grandkids. Equity that doesn't disappear into someone else's pocket. That matters, especially in places like Southeast Tennessee, where $250,000 can still get you something real. Here's my challenge to you. Before you scroll past the next manufactured home listing, Look at it. Look at the year it was built, look at the foundation type, look at the price per square foot, and ask yourself whether the reason that you're skipping it is based on what manufactured homes are today or what you remember them being 40 years ago. Because those are two very different things. If you're relocating to Cleveland, Chattanooga, or anywhere in Southeast Tennessee, and you want to talk through what's realistic at your price point, whether that's a manufactured home on acreage, a site built home, new construction, or something else entirely, that's exactly the conversation that I'm here for. Reach out using the link below in the description and be sure to download my relocation guide while you're there. I'm so excited to learn what it'll look like for you to live your best life in Southeast Tennessee.